Hey everybody, I'm that one guy, and I wanted to create a series of videos to go over the Weakauras I've created. The whole purpose of the Weakauras is obviously to help you better understand your spec and hopefully help you play better as a result, but also to gamify the game. Because WoW does present you with some spell alerts for the specs you play, but not all. And so that leaves you looking for ways to identify if a certain buff or debuff is active. And that's where Weakauras can come in play. And I wanted to do more than just have an icon with a timer in it, right? I wanted to try to present you with visual effects that make it feel more like a video game and immerse you more into the spec you're playing. At least that's the idea. So in these videos, I'm going to go over the Weakauras I've created, how I intend for them to work, and show you how you can modify them if you'd like. So whether you've already found my Weakauras, or you're looking for some for a certain spec, or you just want to have a better idea of how Weakauras work in general, hopefully these videos will help you with that. Demon Hunter, Havoc DH. All right, let's look at what we've got for this one. I'll tell you right up front, I don't have anything supporting Fel-Scarred because it didn't look like there was anything like unique that you needed to track or be aware of other than maybe like your Demon Surge buff, but that's just kind of happens. Can throw that in there for sure if someone's like, I gotta know. We'll take a look at it or we'll add it in there. But otherwise, the only thing we're doing is basic Havoc stuff, Demon Hunter, and then Aldrachi Reaver. So this would be everything. Obviously not going to be there at once. A lot of it only shows in combat or when the buff is active or when there's certain conditionals that are met. But let's just take a look, make this all go away at first. And I'll come back to the hero talent at the end. I-Beam. So again, sometimes I make stuff that I think looks cool and it makes me feel like a video game and on brand. That looks like, you know, I-Beam. So when I-Beam is off cooldown, you'll see that image pop up on your screen. Again, just kind of more designed to helping you realize when you have cooldowns, especially when there are numerous ones that are 30 seconds or less, just letting you know when you have a cooldown so you can be better about using it as soon as you have it as opposed to missing that it's been active for 5 to 10 seconds. And then right next to that is going to be Essence Break. When Essence Break is off cooldown, you'll see that. I don't have anything that shows like the duration of Essence Break. It's only 4 seconds, and after you use it, you know, you need to be capitalizing on that. But if you want a progress bar that says how much time you have left in Essence Break, we can add that. And then Sigil of Spite. If you're talented into Sigil of Spite and it is off cooldown, you will see these. Right? So they'll pop up as soon as it's off cooldown, letting you know to use it. Immolation Aura has, I guess, like a two-part trigger. So one, you'll see that if you can and should cast Immolation Aura. When you are talented into a Fire Inside and have 2 charges of it, what it's looking for is, do you have the Immolation Aura buff active? And do you have a charge 1 or more of Immolation Aura? So in single target, when you're only talented, when you're not talented into a Fire Side, you just have 1 charge of Immolation Aura. This is pretty easy because that pops up when it's off cooldown, so you can use it. When you're in AoE and you have multiple charges, yeah, you may need to track those charges yourself if you're going to want to cast more than 1 charge at a time, like what the opener suggests when you're in Fel-Scarred. But otherwise, what it's looking for is, do you have the buff active and do you have a charge? And as soon as the buff is not active and you have a charge, you'll see that. All right, that's essentially how it works. Just again, a nice reminder that Immolation Aura is off cooldown, push the button. Chaos Theory, recreating it. This one's interesting. This is like the only spell alert I noticed for Demon Hunter, and you only get it if you're talented into it. Whereas a lot of the spell alerts for other classes are just already baked into it as part of their passively learned effects. So this one's interesting in that you do get 1 spell alert as Demon Hunter, but only if you're talented into Chaos Theory. But that one's pretty straightforward. It's going to show up if you're talented into it and after you do Blade Dance. Blade Dance. When Blade Dance is off cooldown, you'll see that icon right there. And the same is true for Felblade. When that's off cooldown, you'll see that right there. If you do not have enough Fury to cast Blade Dance, but Blade Dance is, you know, off cooldown, that black circle behind it goes away. Basically, yeah, you would see that. You would notice that Blade Dance is off cooldown, but I can't cast it yet because I don't have enough Fury. So if that's ever in your situation, just know that's why it looks like that. That's why there's not a little black circle behind it. Felblade, pretty straightforward, right? If it's off cooldown, you'll see that icon there. And around them would be Sigil of Flame. When Sigil of Flame is off cooldown, again, just trying to utilize the space that I've already taken up with other images instead of trying to create 90 different things. When Sigil of Flame is off cooldown, you'll see a green circle around your Blade Dance icon. And when Vengeful Retreat is off cooldown, you will see a green circle around your Fellblade icon. And that works pretty well for Aldrachi Reaver, since using your Vengeful Retreat resets your Fellblade. So you just kind of know those two hand in hand right there. And then I am tracking inertia but not exergy. I'll explain in a second. But when inertia is active after doing Vengeful Retreat, so when your next Fellblade or Fel Rush will activate it, you'll see that icon there, right? Just to get another visual cue in case you forgot. And then this will be your 4-second timer, letting you know how long you have left of the inertia buff. So this is the inertia usable buff, however you want to think about it, and this is the progress bar down here. I don't have Exergy because Exergy is a 20-second buff that can go up to, I think, like 30 seconds. Like if you did the hunt right as part of your opener and then you did Vengeful Retreat, it's very likely that you'll have longer than 20 seconds on that buff, and Vengeful Retreat is a 20-second cooldown. So if you are using Vengeful Retreat on cooldown after the opener, you'll just almost permanently have Exergy active. So that's why I didn't have a progress bar for that, because very rarely, unless you're like in between, if you're using that talent in Mythic Plus and in between packs or out of combat, very rarely would you drop that buff. But if you want to see it, I mean, we can. There'd be permanently a progress bar that never gets to 0, I feel like. Fury, I'll put it there. I used to have it up here, but I like to try to keep what's above your head clear, so I may need to go back and change some other Weakauras I've done. But this is just your Fury, right? It's here on your nameplate or wherever you put your nameplate, and I just figured right below your feet, kind of like where they already have the resource display, but I just made it as part of my pack so you don't have to have multiple different things. And a Metamorphosis timer, right, letting you know, 1, you're in Metamorphosis, which you know from I-Beam and casting Metamorphosis, but then 2, how much longer you have left on it. And then just a cast bar, which you'd probably only ever get from I-Beam, and then like resource gathering or skinning and stuff like that. That's it for just like what you'll get from the base set of hero talents for Havoc Demon Hunter. So this is what you would see in Fel-Scarred, because I did not really notice anything else in Fel-Scarred that needed to be tracked. Like I said, I know there is your special super enhanced abilities with Abyssal Gaze and Sigil of Doom, and then I think it's a different type of fire than Immolation or a consuming fire, but those are just things you have, and then using them increases your Demon Surge buff. So again, maybe as part of like the video game effect, I should show that those are available, and just like, hey, look, you have those icons now instead of the other ones. But I just couldn't figure out a neat way to show them really, or if it had any kind of impact in something you'd want to know, or if it would just take up space on your screen. So that's why. As for Aldrachi Reaver, more green and purple coming. The whole set, right, adds those things that are going on and off your screen. Right, don't worry, I'll go through individually. But this is what Aldrachi Reaver would add. And Soul Fragments, right? Again, played around with where these were for a while. I had them up here, but it's like they can just kind of live permanently at 5. So 6, right? When you get up to 6, you will get your Reaver's Glaive. And then probably what I'll do is minimize all this. So Soul Fragments, right, goes up to 6. If you want those in a different spot, you would just go to each individual Soul Fragment, and you can either click and drag or change its location using the X and Y offset. If there's anything in here you don't like, you can always right-click and delete Children in Group. Right? It's not going to break the Weakauras. They're all interdependent. They don't rely on anything else to tell them what to do. Or if you don't want to delete it, maybe you want it for later, you can go to the Load tab and check Never, and it will never show up until you uncheck that box. But those are your Soul Fragments, right? It goes up to 6. And after you get your 6th one, it activates Reaver's Glaive, right? Letting you know that your next Glaive cast is Reaver's Glaive, which is going to give you an additional buff. So your Soul Fragments would go away, and you would see this icon right here. I will say, I may tweak it some, because if you're ever not talented into Chaos Theory, there's just that gap, but that's not necessarily the end of the world. Just know that if you ever see these moved out, that's why, because a little bit OCD, and I like things being symmetrical and touching. Same thing for inertia. I may move it up whenever you're not in Aldrachi Reaver, so that it's just right there and there's not a gap. That's just me. That's a little bit of my OCD. After you use Reaver's Glaive, I'm going to skip to here, you get those 2 buffs for Chaos Strike and Blade Fury, and I'm just using kind of like what the images look like. The icons for them is 2 crossed swords So instead of trying to recreate something that looked like Blade Fury and Chaos Strike, I just went very simple. That one's for Annihilation, and that one is for Death Sweep, or Chaos Strike and Blade Fury. So you'll see those two buffs, so you know, one, that they're both active, and which one you use, just so you can kind of mentally, visually plan for using them in the order that you want to. After you have consumed both of them, you get Thrill of the Fight. And Thrill of the Fight is 2 buffs. That's why there is a purple and green bar. Those actually are tracking different things. One of them is like your attack speed is increased for 20 seconds. But simultaneously, like your damage is increased by 10% or something for 10 seconds. So there will be 2 different bars there, just showing you the duration of those separate buffs. The green one goes away first because it's only 10 seconds, and then the purple one, but will go away after, obviously. That's how time works. But that's why there's 2 there. Again, I think that looks kind of cool. A green thing inlaid inside a purple thing, and it looks a little like, you know, on brand with Havoc Demon Hunters and all the I-beam stuff and big flashy Fel energy. But anyways, that's why there's 2 things there. That's what it's tracking, is the 2 different types of Thrill of the Fight buffs that you get after consuming both of these, right? Rending Strike and Glaive Flurry. And then one of the other things you get is Reaver's Mark. Maybe we want a different place to show this or a better way to track it. But basically, Reaver's Mark can stack up to 2. This would be 1 stack. This would be 2 stacks. Pretty straightforward. So you'll know how many stacks you have if you have 2 purple circles or not, and how much time is left on them. So that would be it for the hero talents for Aldrachi Reaver, and like I said, everything involving Demon Hunter, at least just Havoc Demon Hunter right now. What I'll do is just kind of show you what it looks like in gameplay very clinkily. Not a guide on how to play perfectly, just showing you how the Weakauras work. I am in the mover build, right? Extra G with Aldrachi Reaver, so you won't see that inertia stuff. And like I said, you won't see anything for Extra G because you should just almost kind of permanently have that buff. But when you're in combat, you'll see all these things letting you know what's off cooldown. So again, if you're not using them, maybe there's too much on your screen because you're just killing mobs that take 1 hit. But otherwise, right, when you use Immolation Aura, that goes away. When you use Sigil of Flame, that goes away. When you use Vengeful Retreat, that goes away. And as you notice, for like a brief second, Fellblade disappears just because of like GCDs and fun stuff like that. And notice all those things are gone. Sigil of Spite, right? Use it, that goes away. I-Beam, use it, that goes away. That's just kind of how it works. And there we used Essence Break, Fellblade's back, Immolation Aura's back. I have nothing else I can push, so I know that at the very least I can just push Annihilation as long as I have enough Fury. Alright, Sigil of Flame is back. And I see, this is what I mean by like why I moved those souls. There they go, is because otherwise they can just be hanging out there for a bit. And there's your 2 Reaver's Mark, and there's the 2 buffs where I was talking about, where they're ticking down to their own thing. That's for the damage buff, and then that one is for the haste buff. And there you go. That is why, more or less, they are tracked differently. And I have noticed that the words that I can't say, I have noticed that the green one, the one that's a damage buff, does take like a second to be active, right? It does seem to pop up a little after the purple one does, see, like just there. But that's just its own thing. And see, I just know when stuff's coming up off cooldown. I know what I have available to me, and I know about Reaver's Mark stuff. I throw the fight, like just as you're playing, right? And you just, when you get into the flow of things, you can tell what you have and don't have. And I will say that the only thing I do not have tracked, excuse me, the only thing I do not have tracked would be the Hunt and Metamorphosis. Anything that has like a 1.5 minute or longer cooldown, I don't put on there because, as you can see, there's plenty on the screen already. And you don't need to then just have an additional thing that pops up once every 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes because, you know, still going with what the theme of the game was and using your action bars to see your cooldowns. I think you can just track 2 things. One, I don't know where else I would put them. That wouldn't just take up more space and feel out of place. But then 2, it's a 2-minute cooldown and a 1.5 minute cooldown. Or so like, I think in your gameplay you can start to figure that out when those are available. And at least the rest of this will keep you from having to track I-Beam and Blade Dance and Immolation Aura and Sigil of Spite. And then the only things you have to worry about checking on your action bars is Metamorphosis and the Hunt. Okay, that would be that for Aldrachi Reaver. If I switch it to Fel-Scarred, this is where I was talking about with the multiple stacks of Immolation Aura, and that what it's looking for is the buff active? Yes, so it's not going to show you. So if you wanted to use it, right, even like obviously you can use it if you want to, but there just will not be the indication on your screen to use it. This just lets you know, hey, you no longer have the buff, but you do have a charge of Immolation Aura. Okay, so that's kind of like the main difference in terms of like when you have multiple charges of Immolation Aura. It's just that will only show if you don't have the buff but can apply it, right? And you didn't have the buff and it finally just came off cooldown. So other than that, the other stuff with Aldrachi Reaver goes away. You're not talented in inertia for this build because in AoE they don't have that one. But if you were, you'd see that little icon there in the progress bar. Somebody will flip over to that to show you. But say I don't have anything to indicate these are active because they're just still part of your base set, right? And you get your Demon Surge explosions from them is about it. But everything else would stay the same in terms of like what you're tracking and what you're looking for. And then again, same thing, even though this is now consuming fire, it's not going to show you that Weakura unless the buff is no longer active. So if that's something that you'd rather be aware of for yourself, and like, hey, I even want to know, like, I want to know when it's at 2 stacks, not just whenever the buff isn't active. You could change it pretty easily. You just have to let me know in the feedback below, in the comments below, and I'd be happy to add stuff. The only thing I wanted to change was just what happens when you have... I can't change talents in combat. It's just to show what happens when you have inertia. Just because. Alright, when you have inertia, again, same thing, stuff isn't going to show to you in combat. When you use Vengeful Retreat, it's just letting you know that, hey, you can now activate your inertia buff. And then when you activate your inertia buff, there's your green progress bar letting you know how much time is left on it. And it's gone. Okay? So that's it. That'd be the kind of only difference. And again, not tracking that for Extra G because it's such a long buff, I feel like you'll always have it active. But that's just my 2 cents. Again, if there's something I left out that you feel like definitely needs to be included, like for Fel-Scarred or anything else in Demon Hunter, just let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you like it and have fun. Again, I hope you found that helpful. I do intend to make a Weakura pack for every spec. So if I haven't made one for the spec that you play or that you'd like to see, just comment that down below. Again, I do intend to make one for every spec, but if I see people asking for it or really wanting one, I'll probably get to it quicker than if I just do it on my slow, leisurely pace. I hope it will enhance your gameplay. Like I said, it's all about gamifying the game and making it more fun and more immersive for you, while also helping you improve as a player because the information that you need to react to is hopefully more readily available. If you have any other questions about this Weakura pack that you just watched or any other ones, again, please feel free to comment. I try to be as interactive as possible in my YouTube section. And that's it. I hope you have a great day.